All right, it is June 2nd, 2025. We are here to talk about and with the new core AI team. So this is an exciting new team, just went live in the last week. And so we wanted to follow up with the conversation since it's such an important area of work and is a new initiative for the WordPress project. So as always, it's time to chat with the community and see what's going on and have this conversation. So if you haven't been to a hallway hangout before, they're meant to be casual, collaborative, kind, uh, curiosity centered. We're not here to make a bunch of decisions. We're not here to, um, you know, get into things that are off topic from the hallway hangout either. So I ask the folks like stay focused on the conversation at hand. There's also a lot of us, so the more people that join and the more questions that happen, the more I'm gonna have to step in and moderate. So if we can, we'll try and see what happens if we just open floor and have folks share, but probably most likely I'd like folks to drop in questions into the chat. They'll just be easier for us to process and make sure we get to everyone. So let's plan to do that as well. Um, Before we go further, I don't know, James, do you want to do the actual slideshow? I can just pass it off to you at this point. We can do introductions to everyone.
Yeah, let me get the slides up.
Yeah, we're gonna do a quick intro of folks to start. So each new core AI team member will just say a little bit about themselves before we get into more about the focuses. And then I'm imagining the bulk of the time will be on Q&A. So folks will have plenty of time and space to
Bad news,
chat about
Ann,
things.
sharing is not turned on.
That's a
So,
me problem. Yeah,
okay, I've sent a
there,
request.
there we go. You should be able
Perfect.
to do it now.
Okay, here are our slides. Everybody can see this?
Yeah.
Yep. Yes.
Awesome. Well, as Ann said, this is the hallway hangout. Let's chat about the AI team. And first, we'll introduce ourselves. I'll give it to Jeff.
Sure, yeah. Jeff Paul here, Director of Open Source at Fueled, longtime contributor to Core, going back to 2016 when I was the release deputy on WordPress 4.7. Been on a handful of other release squads since then, most recently WordPress 6.8 that was April-ish this year. I'm not a engineer or core committer. My contributions around core tend to lean more towards product and project leadership. So helping to guide feature delivery, coordination, prioritization side of release processes, things like that. As for Fueled, that's now the unified brand that includes what many folks otherwise know of as 10up. 10up continues to be the dedicated WordPress practice inside Fueled, bringing open source roots from 10up and a strong focus on scalable and high impact solutions. So our work always, has been and continues to be about advancing the open web, and bringing AI closer to core is just a natural evolution. So I'm excited to see that happen. My background in the AI space goes back to 2018 when 10up worked with Saturday Evening Post to building content classification using IBM Watson. That was the original genesis of what we now call Classify as a plugin in the WordPress space that delivers what we think are practical AI features, generating excerpts in alt text, suggesting categories and tags, transcribing audio files, supporting local models and cloud APIs, among many other features there. And since we've been at this since 2018, what makes Classify stick for those that we've worked with is that we try to meet users where they are, offering helpful assistive functionality without forcing it. That came from many years of listening to how real word editors and authors, site owners wanted AI to support and not replace their workflows. That being a pretty important distinction that has seen us adjust course over time. We learned that pretty early on that getting trust in AI came from transparency and control, right? Users want the option to trigger AI, not just have it silently in the background. They want to be able to review and edit results from it, not just accept what the machine's output is as gospel. And they want defaults that that help and that don't feel intrusive. So that philosophy, assistive by design, has deeply influenced our work at Fueled, 10up on Classify, and is a lens that I'll definitely be bringing to the AI team. I will tag Pascal to go next.
Awesome. Thanks. Hey everyone, I'm Pascal, also known as Swiss Speedy or Swiss Spidey. I'm a longtime WordPress core contributor and committer. I work in areas such as internationalization, WPCLI, performance, but also core as well. I happen to work at Google, doing WordPress things and also some AI stuff. Um, when it comes to AI, my most recent projects in the WordPress space have been one leveraging model context protocol or MCP in WordPress using like CLI commands and plugins and things like that. And another aspect that I'm very curious to explore is client-side AI, so anything that runs in a browser using JavaScript, WebAssembly, or even built-in APIs directly in the browser, like Chrome is offering. Just because the privacy aspect is really interesting there, and the performance aspect, because nothing leaves your device, everything happens on your computer, and they're really powerful models. Yeah, that's it. And I hand it over to Felix.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Felix. I've been a core contributor for about 10 years now. Been working on different areas. Initially, my big focus was WordPress multi-site, this interesting niche. But over the years, been contributing to many different teams. One of my long overarching big focuses just API design. So REST API, I've been a maintainer of for a while. And the last few, just like Pascal, I also work at Google. And for the last few years, our focus there has been contributing to the WordPress performance team. So that's something that we co-inaugurated, and I hope to bring some of the successes that I think we've had as a performance team to the AI team. My AI specific background and my biggest overlap with AI and WordPress is that I started this AI services plugin, which is something along the lines what I think like an abstraction for AI in WordPress could look like from a developer facing standpoint. Because I think one of the big problems I saw and still see in the space of WordPress and even PHP as a language is that there's too few of there are not enough of these abstraction layers in place, and SDKs to even talk to AI are missing. And I think that's something I would like to fill, like a gap I'd like to fill. And pass it on to James.
Hello, I'm James. I am a co-rep alongside Felix for this AI team, and I'm the engineering director for AI at Automatic, which is really fun because Automatic does a lot of things with WordPress, and I'm overseeing all of that AI work within the company, which is cool because we could see how AI surfaces on WooCommerce and WordPress and all of the plugins that we have as well. Uh, Before Automatic, which is a newish position, I've been there for 6 months. I ran a startup called WP AI, very creative name, and we did AI for WordPress. We had two primary products. We did an AI IDE called CodeWP before Cursor existed, specifically for WordPress. We also did an agent called Agent WP. We were very good at naming things. Agent WP, which was an agent that existed within WordPress and did things for you before the concept of agents was a really big thing as well. And from the experience of the startup and some of my past in WordPress and in Automatic, there's been a lot of experimentation and work going into some shared open source things that we've done through Automatic, a continuation of our work at WPAI, a few things to highlight: the feature API, MCP explorations alongside what Pascal's doing, and then also plugging some just AI stuff we were doing at Automatic into a lot of the various packages and work and explorations and discovery that had been going on in the industry for a while. Um, Before WPAI, I got my start in WordPress. I literally like grew up in this industry, learned to code by freelancing here, and eventually created an agency, ran that agency for several years, ended up selling that portfolio. I studied AI in university, did another startup outside of WordPress. So I've kind of really just been in WordPress and tech for my entire life, which has been very fun. And my first few experiences with AI and WordPress specifically, it's actually funny, was classified with the alt text features. I don't think I ever mentioned this, Jeff, but the alt text features coming from some Microsoft service a while ago. So that was really fun. And it was one of those moments where things clicked and it was like, hey, WordPress is this platform that I know I can build anything on because I have. And it's something that even then was really clear there could be a lot of positive impact when you figure out how to integrate AI into the technology, but also into the project itself. So I'm pretty excited to have this team exist because that's exactly what we get to think about and steward going into the future. Um, so that's me. All right, that's the team. Next, if I can figure out how to move this slide. Next, I want to chat quickly about our team approach, and just kind of how we plan to be that steward of AI for WordPress, as I mentioned. So there are a few things that we've kind of converged on as this group of four people as to how we want to be impactful to WordPress, to the project. We want to make sure that there are very transparent decisions and discussions around the AI work that we do here. And what that looks like are a lot of public discussions using our make.wordpress.org/AI blog for a lot of those asynchronous conversations. About 2 years ago, there was a Let's Chat post published by Anne, chatting about AI, and there was really good discourse and comments and discussion on that post. So I'd love to emulate that while also using GitHub and Slack, our core AI channel, to be as transparent and open as possible. With that, we also want to be very focused with our leadership, and we want to ship concrete pieces of work and strive towards specific and focused directions to be very impactful to the project. We don't want to sprawl all over the place, spread ourselves thin, and end up in a position where there isn't much impact happening. So we want to make sure that the direction and decisions we make is pointed, but very documented and in line with that transparent focus. Community first as well. So the hallway hangouts, I know I mentioned this a few times in the Core AI channel, but we want to make this a common thing. We want to do more and more hallway hangouts. We want to do a lot of those posts, do a lot of the discussions that we've had ad hoc in the Core AI channel. And I think that results in a lot of lovely ideas showing up. From all of this, we want to have very clear roadmaps, very clear directions on how folks can get involved and contribute and actually plug into these teams and plug into these ideas. So I think the best way to do that is to be very clear with here's the work that we expect to do, here's what we expect it to benefit, and here's how you can get involved. So we're here to steward that AI and WordPress. And a measure of success for me with this team would be strong AI deliverables, whatever that looks like, over the next several months, with many contributors being a part of this work, not just the four of us sitting in hallway hangouts chatting, which I like doing, but I want everybody to be involved in and pushing this project into the future. So that's our team approach. I think I will send it off to Jeff to chat briefly about our starting focuses.
Audio stuck.
I can hear you, Jeff.
Oh, you can?
Yes,
Weird.
you're good.
Zoom shows me as muted in my like bottom bar. So we'll see if it like
You are good.
updates itself and restarts. So if I disappear, that's why. Uh, anyway, starting focus is right. So now the team's officially formed. Trying to share where we're starting from here, with the primary goal being developer enablement. So not just wildly sprinkling AI buttons all over the admin UI. We're focused on shipping some foundational building blocks, services, APIs, patterns and guidelines that other developers like plugin authors, theme builders, agency teams, etc., can compose and remix into their own enhanced AI enhanced experiences. And we're looking to do this work within canonical plugins, specifically not within core initially, so that we can move fast, ship iteratively, respond to feedback outside of the major release cycle. Um, Trying to balance pragmatism and restraint, right? If an AI enhanced experience clearly elevates the UX, we'll explore it. But we're intentionally avoiding bloating core or standardizing UX prematurely. Not aiming for a fully automated WordPress either, right? We're aiming for an AI capable WordPress. Again, I think that distinction is important there. And lastly, kind of what James hinted on a little bit before, the effort only scales as the community participates here. Um, well, I have followed and an admirer of James and Felix and Pascal's work in the space. We're not the only ones with good ideas. We welcome proposals for new focus areas and want to support others working on adjacent tooling and features as well. This is a foundation and not a finish line with the folks here today. And I will tag in Felix next.
Yeah, I'm going to share a little bit about the developer building blocks that we're thinking about so far. So these three projects here that is existing work that some of us have contributed to before or kickstarted. I want to quickly just summarize what each of these projects do. Like the AI services plugin is what I mentioned earlier, as it's basically an AI client abstraction, so that for instance, as a plugin author, you can write a WordPress plugin that connects to any AI provider and do so with the same API. You don't have to learn all the different APIs if you want to support all the different providers. And one of the benefits of that is that you can have the user choose which provider they want to use for certain use cases, so that you don't give them a vendor lock-in that they have to only work with one provider, or if they want to use, or also if you want to have 10 AI plugins on a WordPress site, you don't want to have a subscription with 10 AI providers. Like that would be very costly. So by making this abstractable, you basically give more control to the end user at the end. The MCP WP, it's a AI, it's a command, so it allows you to control WordPress via the command line or via MCP. So this essentially implements MCP servers via WordPress. And then the WP feature API is essentially a new API that allows you to register resources and tools as basically WordPress features, so that they can be used by AI in a more structured manner, because WordPress itself has a million APIs, different APIs, but they're not structured. They allow registering things in many different ways, and some things are not even registerable. And so the feature API brings that into a better structure. And I think, as we all know, AI thrives with structure, and that's why such a project is crucial. I just want to highlight here that these three projects are not necessarily exactly what we're going to be working on. I think we're just highlighting them because there are work that has been done in these respective areas, and I think that those are going to be the focuses. But it might be that maybe some of these projects will be taken over as is into a WordPress project, or they just kickstart a discussion of how we should approach them. I can mostly speak for myself as my work on the AI services plugin. I've already come across so many different learnings that I'm like there are that maybe we need to abstract this further, right? Like I mentioned earlier, there's this gap that there's no AI client abstraction. It doesn't exist only in WordPress. It also exists in PHP. And as a whole. So consider that an opportunity here, where WordPress can be spearheading the potential effort. But also AI service is currently a plugin, and using another plugin to connect to using another plugin as a dependency, while that's possible, especially today, it may not always be ideal, and it also restricts the usage to other plugins. But there's other ways that WordPress could use AI, like for instance in a WP-CLI command, where right now you wouldn't be able to use this. So those are just ideas that maybe we need to abstract things further. In any case, so those are example projects that we have been working on so far, and yeah, the goal is to focus on building core packages or plugins. What exactly will look like, we will have to define.
I'll also jump in very quickly and say that these building blocks allow WordPress itself to begin experimenting with consumer-facing core features, if that's somewhere we want to bring it in the future. But this is the stuff that needs to exist first to open that up. And in the meantime, as these get built and as they have this kind of feature plugin, canonical plugin mark next to their names, it allows the rest of our ecosystem to look at how to build AI for WordPress and create really impressive and lovely solutions themselves. So ideally, this opens up the rest of the ecosystem to be able to build these AI features, and then some of these features could be potentially distilled back into maybe a feature plugin or maybe WordPress core. And it's up to this group to offer that surface to have the discussions about what we actually build towards. But in the immediate future, this canonical approach makes a lot of sense. And just like that illustration shows, it all depends on each other. Ideally, all of these things work well together and they open up WordPress, just as other ecosystems have been opened up to that AI development, keeping us very relevant and ideally pushing towards the future of what CMSs are and what the open web is in this era of AI. All right. Now, there have been some questions that have popped up over the past several days, especially since the release. So I'll hand it to Pascal, and there are several here, but I don't know how many have also popped into the chats and stuff. So if there are many questions, maybe we could just jump into Q&A, starting with some of the stuff that we've identified from the past couple of days.
Yeah, let's start there, and then people just keep dropping them in the chat, and I have like a list that I'm pulling together.
Sounds good. Thanks. So yeah, let's check my notes real quick. So one question that came up a little bit is about mission and timing of this whole team. So what's the mission and why launch this team now? I guess we sort of answered that a little bit already. So we want to build the building blocks for AI integrations in core. Personally, I would say like why launch it now and like why not? Like I would say it's long overdue. There was definitely a time of like in the last 3 years or so where there's been a lot of things happening in the AI space. It's a very fast-paced environment. It made sense to first see how things are developing in the ecosystem, like in the WordPress ecosystem, but like overall. I think now it's just a good time. So things are settling on LLMs. Some terms that have popped up 2 years ago might not be relevant anymore. So everything seems to be going into a similar direction. Standards like MCP are evolving. So now is really a good time to concentrate efforts in such a new team. Then another question was around success metrics. How do we know that the team has succeeded like 12 or 24 months from today? Does anyone from the group want to answer this one? Otherwise, I'll share my thoughts.
I touched on it briefly in one of the previous slides. For me, I think it's just we are in the formative processes of this group. So there aren't specific deliverables, but I think there will absolutely be deliverables. So in 12 to 24 months, actually delivering things to the community, but also having a lot of contribution and a lot of folks involved more than just this core founding team. Ideally, it's a very big push on all of WordPress to think about AI in terms of what this initial group is proposing that we build, but also in how we're infusing AI into maybe making our documentation more accessible to AI development platforms or using AI in triage and all of that. And that's something that the four of us, if we try to think about all of this and actually do all of it, our heads would explode. So in 12 months, I would love to see a lot of community involvement and just the positioning of AI and WordPress in a way where it's impactful, helpful, and pushing the CMS closer to the future that we all want.
I like that. That brings me a bit to the next topic, which is where do we draw the line between building these sorts of integrations in core versus like building, like you said, like sprinkling AI buttons everywhere. So where do we draw the line where we just build foundations in core, build full-fledged features in core, or just provide APIs for plugins to succeed? Um, there, I would also make like personally, I would distinguish between like technical limitations. For example, uh, in my opinion, WordPress shouldn't just, let's say, use OpenAI or something else like baked in. Like people should have a choice to choose the service provider that makes most sense for them. And also, WordPress shouldn't really like talk to like a third party provider out of the box like this and have you require like entering an API key or something. Um, that's why I'm a fan of web AI features. And so just because of these technical limitations, there'll be a lot of things that it's just plugin territory out of the box, in my opinion. Could be a canonical plugin or community plugin.
Yeah, I think. Oh, sorry. I
Oh, go
wanted
ahead.
to add, but yeah, to add to this, I think the initial focus, and when I say initial, that might very well be like a 1 or 2 year at least focus, is going to be on canonical plugins or packages. Partially because there are these technical limitations, but there are also philosophical implementations in terms of all these. The majority of what people today use is paid providers, and WordPress does not integrate historically with any paid providers. And then the only thing which is, I think, that I can think of which is baked into a core, which with like big time third party provider focus, is like embed, for instance. But then that leads to a technical limitation which is that there's a standard on how to embed stuff in a website, but there is no standard on how to talk to AI providers, and I think that leads to a technical limitation in the sense that WordPress wouldn't realistically be able to support any AI provider like that. And additionally, because these AI APIs all work differently, let's assume, I don't know, Google or OpenAI or whoever, they change one thing in the API tomorrow and then all WordPress sites break. Like, are we just going to ship tomorrow a new WordPress core release? I don't think so. So I think that's like a technical limitation on top of this philosophical limitation that makes it challenging for WordPress core in the foreseeable future, I suppose. But I agree. I share very much the excitement about on-device AI, whether that's client side or maybe server hosted on the same host as your WordPress site. Who knows? Like those are interesting opportunities, which I think, even though they are not as capable today as like cloud-based providers, and probably never will be, they will become better and better to the point where they will become more and more feasible to use for regular interactions with AI and WordPress. So I think eventually we could explore definitely what this could look like from a core perspective.
I think also at the same time, the velocity doesn't get negatively impacted by the canonical approach. In fact, it just benefits. So we don't have to wait for a year and a half to figure out if there's going to be centralization or this standard that appears out of the blue, but instead build these feature things with the checkbox next to it that says, yes, this is a WordPress feature project. You can use this and you can feel confident in using this, which really fulfills the mission of getting WordPress down the path of AI, rapidly iterating, figure out what works with these canonical plugins, figure out if they should remain, and in line with the longer release cycles, then determine are there pieces of this that should become core or should it not? Maybe it should never. Um, so it'll be interesting to be able to work really rapidly and with the community in this way that I haven't really seen much of in WordPress. I have seen it with the Performance Lab plugin. We've mentioned the performance team before. I think that's a really good example of how you can rapidly iterate. Same with the Gutenberg experiments. So I think that type of approach is the perfect approach for AI.
Yeah, you bring a very good point with the rapid iteration because, as I said, it's a very fast changing environment. It doesn't make sense to build something in core when 6 months from now it might look very different. Another topic was more about the future vision for AI in general, I'd say. Could AI eventually build or replace whole plugins for us? I would probably strike the eventually because it can already do that. Or has anyone else tried building plugins with AI already?
That was our entire business before before we ended up at Automatic. Yeah. Um, and I think like this future vision question is kind of horrifying to some people and not horrifying to others. I'll note that we put so much time and so much effort into making sure we could make relevant and good snippets for WordPress creators and then eventually good plugins for WordPress creators. But we never ended up getting anywhere close to, and we would see requests like this, getting anywhere close to like a fully featured form solution that then was this fully featured solution that worked really well, that had consistent updates and security updates and human that I could go to for support. So I think when you think about specific for code, and this is a bit of a tangent, but it's where I came from, specific to code, you can create these kind of low lift things that help you extend a WooCommerce site for a client, which was actually like the first use case that we had for our Code WP product. But I don't think you're really going to get to that level of service that comes with these large scale plugins, nor would you really want to, in my opinion. So for me, the future vision of WordPress is how does the WordPress itself serve as a framework for this functionality that comes in the form of maybe AI helping you extend in smaller ways and these plugins helping you extend in more complex and robust ways, paired with your data through the form of posts, pages, custom post types, and have this system well integrated with AI, either internally through agents that folks have built for WordPress or externally through the MCP connections, and just make sure WordPress itself serves as kind of what it's already done for the past 22 years, which is that central place for your data and information and a way to present it, and how you can make sure that this remains possible in the era of AI, where the concept of a site may change into the future, the approach that people take to accessing and presenting content might change, and making sure that WordPress is in a good spot for that.
So it seems like we already have a bunch of questions in the chat. And
Yeah, do you have a pause now for the questions that you had?
mhm.
Okay, cool, perfect. Let's launch into some of the questions in the chat and I will read those off. Aaron Jordan, who's on the call, asked, how does someone join the team, or is it only the four initial people that are allowed on it?
So the team's still being formed in terms of how this team actually operates. I think the answer is The best way to get involved immediately is through the Core AI group and through the discussion posts that we'll put out momentarily. And from that, it will probably become very clear that there are specific pathways and projects and ways to get involved. And as I opened up with, I think a really big focus of the team is how do we publish a strong roadmap and a strong handbook and documentation on how you can be involved and how you can understand what we're doing, but also understand, hey, this team is immediately focused on these developer building blocks, focused on stewarding AI throughout WordPress. There may and absolutely will be gaps where other folks can come in and help fill. So what that looks like is unclear, but I think it's something that we all want to figure out. And the best way immediately would be just getting involved in the surfaces that exist.
Cool. Aaron, does that answer your question before I?
Yeah, seems to answer it as best as can be answered right now.
Yeah, that's basically the case. Yeah. As I think everyone's been talking on this call, and as we know, like there's going to be a lot of work to do, and success will look like many different people being involved. So, and probably a lot of cross collaboration with different teams. Joe McGill asked, are there any short-term objectives the team is focusing on that you're ready to share, or are you still in the process / forming stage?
I would say we are very much in the process forming stage. Yeah, we have this high level focus that we talked about earlier, but I don't think there are any concrete deliverables defined yet. I think that's something that we want to explore as a team. That's part of why we wanted to, yeah, get this team together and get a group of contributors to discuss these efforts. Something we have to think about how is going back to Slack and other tools, like how are we going to coordinate and these efforts, these high level discussions in the best way, like, because I think historically, like lots of discussions happen on track, which is specific tickets, or they happen on specific GitHub projects. But what we're doing here is a higher level conversation. So I think these will probably kickstart in the Core AI Slack channel. But I also have been wondering maybe how much should we use something like GitHub discussions that can be maybe, I think maybe can we have something where we just have a project for discussions or something like, right? Because we don't even know what the concrete projects will be just yet, so we can't really use issues or something like that. So I think we need a place for some more structured discussions in addition to Slack. But that's something that we need to figure out as a team.
Speaking of discussions, very, very short term, WordCamp Europe is coming up. I know a bunch of people in this call might be there or will be there. So we'll definitely have time to discuss these kind of things in person as well this week, either during Contributor Day or the actual conference. And then we can share the notes on the new Slack channel or blog.
Gustavo asked, Automatic is focusing heavily on AI internally. I would love to know how much this team's success is cared for by WordPress org and Automatic leadership. For the sake of this call, I think we should talk more about WordPress leadership rather than necessarily Automatic. Would anyone like to take that, or I can share some thoughts?
Yeah, I can take some of that. So as a part of forming this team wasn't just the four of us coming together and announcing a team. It was a lot of thought that went into it before the team formed. And as a part of that thought, there was discussions with Matt and Mary and project leadership about why this team should exist. And it became very clear that the team should exist. And what the team should do, which is steward AI for WordPress, provide that surface for WordPress to grow into the future, whatever that looks like. Chat with the community, understand what the needs are, and eventually go and help build these things. So Matt and Mary are completely on board with this. And this is something that I don't want to put words in people's mouths, but I think most people involved in this project think that this is one of the most important things that we could be doing right now, which is understanding where the future of the open web is going to go, and then understanding how we can make sure that WordPress remains a core piece of that open web. Uh, and AI is one of those components, but it's an increasingly larger component of that. So there's a lot of focus and thought into how you mindfully do that with a project at this scale and this scope and this maturity, coming from us as this AI team, but also from the leadership of the project as well. And I would also, I won't go into automatic territory, but I'll just say I think most companies as well that I've spoken with, especially when I was doing the independent startup, are also very thoughtful about this. We all understand that this is a big part of the future of our industry. And I would say if you ask any company leader, anybody in a position related to WordPress or related to AI and the crossover there, there's a lot of thought and care about where this goes, what this does, and how it impacts.
Awesome. Thank you. The next question just popped up. Is there any plan to integrate WordPress core with LLM in the future? From Rajan. Apologies if I got your name wrong.
And I think that's somewhat similar to the one before that from Kyle Pesh talking
Yeah,
about
could you talk about both
model
of those? That'd
integration.
be great. Yeah.
Yeah, and I probably actually jumping on Felix's toes here. But I'm such a fan of what he had built, and I can't stop talking about it, I guess. So, but Felix, if you want to jump in too, that's fine. I mean, I think I don't expect that, like we mentioned early on, that these things are going to be in core natively, right? It's going to be in these canonical plugins or projects or packages. And the AI services one that was mentioned earlier is a good example for what Rajan and Kalpesh have brought up, right? Like being able to have any sort of model being what's behind the AI functionality, right? What's powering it, whether it's what Kalpesh mentioned, things from Claude, OpenAI, Google, right? Like it could be any of those, and that's where the AI services kind of helps, right? Like plugging in a different model there, then kind of powers the AI functionality in other places of the WordPress AI experience. Felix, I know you've spent a lot of time working on that. Was there anything else that you would call out relevant there?
Not much to add. I mean, maybe one additional thought is that, of course, there are certain use cases maybe where you've worked where maybe a certain model works best for your use case, right? Like, and there are certainly moments where then you want to say, okay, I only want to code something that works. This feature should only work with this model or this model from this provider or so on, right? Because it's maybe optimized for it. But that said, I think a lot of the right. I guess the reality today is like there is no AI built into WordPress core, and if we start somewhere, we would probably start with some. I will call them now relatively basic features in the sense of AI, like generate like a post title or something, right? Like or something like that. Which I think that is something where, even though models still have differences in how you should prompt them ideally, I think there is like this is the kind of thing where you could easily say, okay, I'm going to support this for whatever provider the user chooses, the user configures on their site. So I just want to call out that possible difference in use case. Yeah, in either way, something like AI services or some AI client abstraction would make that possible. But yeah, I don't know, like there's no concrete plan to integrate this with core. But maybe at some point in the likely more distant future, this will become possible. I partially think this is maybe contingent to an actual AI API specification that is established and that's nothing that's WordPress specific. That will need to be in something across the whole web ecosystem. that will need to happen to unlock this, I think.
Also, I think so much of AI is the model, but it's also how you're exposing data to that model and the pipeline that you use to process that data and hook into the software. And that's in WordPress, but that's everywhere. So ideally, what you create are robust systems with the core logic that you can, every time a model increases in what it can do and how it operates and how quick it is and how cheap it is, you can swap it. And obviously that changes the behavior of your pipeline, but you still want those building blocks that you can use as a developer to plug your models in, plug your data in, create these workflows or create these pipelines and integrate with WordPress in a defined way. So we need that type of stuff for WordPress, which is very model related, which comes through the AI services stuff, through that provider abstraction stuff, but also very related to how we expose the data from WordPress internally, which was something that we were thinking about when we built Feature API, and how you expose it to third-party things, which is the AI command, the MCP work. And if you can create kind of a collection of systems for WordPress in the canonical sense or the feature plugin or the package way, uh, then you can begin creating these robust systems that keep up with the changes that come from the frontier labs creating the models themselves.
Awesome. I want to give time to Paul. I know you said you wanted to share something. I do want to keep in mind that we have about 10 minutes left and there's a question. So I think whenever you wanted to demo might be best to share in the Core AI channel, but would love to give you space to share what's on your mind.
Yeah, hi everyone. I created a add-on for my plugin, the Matador Jobs plugin, which creates images for it. But the thought that's come up from it, that was very custom, and we sort of like hand built an interface between the service provider and the plugin. Um, I would love to think that perhaps we could create a standardized API endpoint or standardized suggestion of how to call the data in, so that maybe an example of an API endpoint um, that could be used for random bits of pieces that are coming off. I don't know if that does that make sense? It's something that will be in scope of this. Um, and the
I
other
think
thing,
that
sorry.
I think that plugs in, Paul, kind of what I was saying a bit earlier, in that you have your models and the way you speak to the models, but you also need to provide data in a standard way. And that's something
Yeah,
that we encountered at WPAI when we built the agent. This is absolutely something we encountered at Automatic when we started building many different AI solutions that all needed to work together. And that's where this feature API project came from,
yeah,
providing a unified way you access the data, but you also interact with the software in a way that's
yeah.
friendly for LLMs.
Okay, so the standardize the interface that the plugin developer uses to get the data, but does that also suggest a standard way that the AI, the service, the cloud service that we're talking to, will format the data to us, or is it's every time? Um, are they always randomly different depending on what the developers at the time feel like? I don't know. I just worked with this one service provider who put a middleware in between the cloud and us.
Yeah, when
Um,
you speak with a provider, there's typically a somewhat standard way that you can input data and then get structured output back out, which then you can plug back into your software to do something. And that tool calling has kind of become this standard-ish thing across the providers, but it's not, you can't access it in a standard way. If you go from Claude to OpenAI to these different tools, that's fragmented. So I believe Felix already solved that with the AI services and tool calling. We did an exploration where we plugged features into the AI services. And I think like that type of connections between all of these different things that we've been talking about is where we're going to try to bring the work that we do. So these are different solutions that help you provide data in a unified way, help you speak with third-party systems, help you talk with the model providers. But ideally, they all converge in this suite of things that work together. And so when you're a developer, you have all of these things that you can depend on to give you all of that functionality to speak with the providers in this unified way. And
Yep.
it's something that because it's WordPress core, instead of these very well built, but projects that are not connected to WordPress core, you can depend on. And you can say, I'm going to use this. This is the way we do it in WordPress, as can all the other developers. And then there are things we can explore when all plugin developers are building AI features with these unified ways. How do we make it so just like WordPress can be extended in so many ways with plugins, you can extend your plugins in so many ways with AI without uh, ideally with doing it where everything works together. But that's pretty far future thinking. We need to get to the roadmap first.
Yeah, no, I know I struggled at the time to get that AI API calls working, and I would love to have been able to like drop a middleware in from yourself and just add this new service provider to the bottom end and pull out the standardized from them. So if I then in the future could have the opportunity to change it, I'm just changing it on outside of your middleware rather than rewriting the whole thing, which is where I hope we will end up. Um, do you think this? Now, the other question, of course, is because this is a canonical plugin and we're trying to put it into plugins, the dependency, do you think it will be able to be embedded as a sub project or as a service inside of a plugin code? Or do you
Felix
think
has
it's
thought a
always
lot about this.
Yeah, I think this goes to what I mentioned before. One of the things that when I started AI services after a few months, quickly this discussion came up that um, some plugin developers don't want to depend explicitly on another plugin because while you can have plugin dependencies, it's not a completely smooth experience. Like you still have to require the user to activate, install the other plugin, and so on. And like embedding, you can't reasonably embed another plugin in your plugin, I guess, in that way. But that's why we started thinking maybe this should not be a plugin in the first place. Maybe it should be composer packages instead.
Mm. Yeah, I think that might, in the meantime, until it's in core, I think a composer package, which your plugin is actually pulling in itself for the plugin. And so as a developer of a, I can use a composer package. If they've got the plugin installed, I drop that. If it's in core, I drop that. I think that's getting something core. I think will be really nice soon because I think that's one of the key things going forward. But I will shut up now.
Thanks for chiming in. No, it's great. It's great to have folks share. There's one more question that's come up that I feel like is related to all this, but Paul asks, in the context of integrating with external LLMs, are there thoughts on how core can support RAG, retrieval augmented generation, maybe with enhancements to core's REST API?
I'll take this. I think there are thoughts. We've mentioned this back and forth. I don't think it ended up as one of the primary thoughts, but maybe it should. Um, and the reason I took this is because I built a vector database plugin for WordPress, and it added that functionality through the REST API and basically made WordPress into a vector database. Um, so that might be something interesting to explore. But on the topic of not stretching the team too thin, I don't know if it should be a core focus immediately or not. I'm not sure. But it's possible with WordPress. It's something that actually only recently makes sense with core because the primary databases of MySQL and MariaDB now both natively support vectors when they haven't up until basically this year, I'd say. So it could be it absolutely should be on the list, and it might be one of these things where we help steward the project. Obviously, I have my vector database work open source. Probably needs some help in terms of how it's built, but these are things where if it makes sense, we should explore it. We should help steward that work. We should maybe develop it ourselves, or we should get community involvement to do the same. But it's possible for sure, and could be very helpful in that suite of building blocks for developers.
Awesome. Thank you. Any other last minute questions with the minute we have left? Okay. Otherwise, I will be recapping this on the Make AI site with the recording. And folks can follow up there. As we've mentioned, this is one of many conversations. This is the starting point. This is the beginning, not the finish. So let's continue chatting, continue bringing stuff up. And thanks everyone for showing up. It's always wonderful to see everyone's faces and always neat to see how many people choose to engage in this really important work. So, and thank you to all the AI team members. I'm really excited to see what you all get up to and appreciate all the thought that went into this. So enjoy WordCamp Europe if you're going there. Otherwise, see you all in Slack.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Ann. Bye all.